What the Master Would Not Discuss. Xin Qixie by Yuan Mei. Volume 2. Zhang Yuan's Wife. Xue, the wife of Zhang Yuan from Yanxi County in Henan, returned to her mother's home during a visit. Her younger uncle came to meet her on the way. Passing by an ancient tomb with gloomy trees, Xue felt the urge to urinate. A man took his donkey and went with his cousin to look for the red cloth skirt that had been hung on a tree. After finishing his business, he returned only to find that the skirt was no longer there. Upon returning home, he slept with his wife, but did not get up at dawn. When his family members broke into the room, they found the couple's bodies without heads. They reported the incident to the authorities, but no resolution was reached. The cousin was questioned and recounted the events of the day before. Near the grave, they discovered a small hole that seemed to be used frequently for entering and exiting. Upon investigating, they found the red cloth skirt inside. It belonged to the woman. When they dug further, they found the two heads, but no coffin. However, the authorities were still unable to solve the mystery, the butterfly mystery. In the capital city, there was a man named Ye, who was on good terms with a man from Yizhu named Wang Si. On July 7th, Yang Si's 60th birthday was approaching, so Ye rode his donkey to offer his congratulations. As they passed by Fangshan, dusk fell. A tall man suddenly appeared on horseback and asked where they were going. Ye explained their purpose. The man, who turned out to be Ye's cousin, offered to join them. Ye was delighted and travelled with him. However, the man kept nudging Ye's back. Although Ye pretended to allow it, he actually stayed behind. Suspecting that the man was a thief, Ye kept looking back. By then it was dark, and he could barely see the man's face. All he saw was a flash of light, and the man seemed to be walking with his head hanging down and his feet touching the air. Thunder accompanied them throughout the journey. The man breathed out black smoke, and when his tongue touched the lightning, it was over a meter long and red in color. Yi was terrified but had no choice but to endure it, and hurried to Wang Sai's house. Wang Sai welcomed him warmly, and they drank together. Yi privately asked about the man they had met along the way. Wang Si said he was a cousin named Zhang who worked as a rope maker in the capital city, specializing in melting silver. Yi felt somewhat relieved, but still doubted what he had seen. After drinking, Yi tried to sleep but could not, worried about the man. Eventually he asked for a companion to stay with him. Yi lay awake all night, while his companion slept soundly. When the third drum beat signaled midnight, the man sat up, stretched out his tongue, and the room was illuminated. He sniffed at Ye's blanket, and saliva flowed continuously from his tongue. He reached out and began to eat the companion, whose bones fell to the ground one by one. Ye, who revered the god of war, urgently called out, "Where is the great Emperor Guan?" Suddenly the sound of bells and drums echoed, and the god of war descended with a giant sword to strike the monster. The monster transformed into a butterfly as large as a wheel, and fought back with its wings. After a moment of struggle, another thunderclap sounded, and both the butterfly and the god disappeared. Yi collapsed and did not wake up until noon. When Wang Si opened the door, he found blood on the ground and found that both Zhang and the companion were gone. Yi's donkey was still in the stable. They sent people to Zhang's workshop, but Zhang was there melting silver and had not left for Yizhou at all. Officer Bai, a man surnamed Wang from Changzhou, made a living by traveling around performing shows. At the end of the year, he visited the beautiful gardens of the Zhang family's estate in Qingshan. There he met Officer Bai, someone he had often played with in the past. After their visit, they stayed overnight at the estate. That night, Wang could not sleep, wondering why Officer Bai's head seemed to stretch 2 meters long as he blew out the lamp. Terrified, he wrapped his head in a blanket to sleep. In the morning, Officer Bai approached his bed and measured it with his hand. The area he had pressed on was as cold as iron. Wang shouted, but no one responded. Suddenly, a black creature with a pig's face and claws jumped in through the window and fought fiercely with Officer Bai. By dawn, a dead python was found on the ground. Officer Bai had been suffering from a strange illness for half a year, but recovered suddenly, on the same night that Wang had encountered him. The Manan, from Guangdong, who fed on humans. A man from Guangdong named Xu Shanzhen made a living by digging for ginseng. It was believed that such digging had to be done at night. Exhausted after a long night of work, Xu decided to rest on the sand. Awakening. There was a giant man who held him in his arms. He was about 20 feet tall and covered in red hair. With his left hand he caressed Xu's body, and with his body he rubbed Xu's hair, as if playing with pearls and jade. However, with each stroke he burst into uncontrollable laughter. Xu thought he was about to die. Soon after, the giant carried him to a cave where there were piles of tiger sinews, deer tails and ivory. He placed Xu on a stone couch and brought over tiger and deer meat for him to eat. Xu was overjoyed, but he was unable to eat it. The giant leaned down as if lost in thought, then nodded as if he had come up with a plan. He struck a rock to start a fire, fetched water, and cooked the meat for Xu to eat. Xu ate heartily. At dawn, the giant carried Xu outside again, armed with 5 arrows. He tied Xu to a high tree. Xu was terrified, thinking the giant was about to shoot him. But soon, a group of tigers, attracted by the smell of a human, emerged from their caves and attacked Xu. The giant drew his arrows and killed the tigers, then untied Xu, dragged the dead beasts back, and cooked them for Xu to eat as before. Xu finally realized that the giant was feeding him to feed the tigers. This continued for over a month, and during that time, Xu remained unharmed, while the giant grew increasingly fat. One day, Xu longed for home. He knelt before the giant and wept, pointing continuously towards the east. The giant was also moved to tears. Then the giant carried Xu to a ginseng gathering area and showed him the way home, also indicating the locations of ginseng patches as a sign of his gratitude. From then on, Xu became wealthy, the governor of Pingyang. Zhu Luo, governor of Pingyang, was known for his cruelty. In the towns he governed, he had specially made heavy shackles and large clubs. Whenever women were involved in cases of misconduct, he would force them to confess to adultery. He would beat prostitutes, removing their undergarments and using the clubs to injure their private parts until they were swollen and ulcerated for months, saying, "Let's see how they receive their clients now." He would smear the blood from their buttocks on the faces of their clients. He was even more brutal with the most beautiful prostitutes, shaving their hair and cutting open their nostrils, saying, "If the most beautiful are no longer so, then the profession of prostitution will cease." Whenever he met other officials, he would boast, "To remain unmoved by beauty is a sign of a heart as hard as iron and cold as ice." Eventually, due to his atrocities, he was transferred to serve in another region in Shandong. When Zhuluo brought his family to an inn in Chipping, the inn was tightly locked. Zhuluo asked why. The innkeeper explained, "There's a ghost in this inn. It hasn't been opened in years." Zhuluo, being stubborn, said, "What harm could it do? Surely the ghost would flee upon hearing my reputation." His wife and children pleaded with him, but he wouldn't listen. He left them in another room and sat alone with a sword and a candle until the 3rd drumbeat of the night. Someone knocked on the door. It was an old man with white hair and a red hat who bowed deeply to Zhuluo. Zhuluo shouted, "What ghost is this?" The old man replied, I am not a ghost. I am the local spirit of this place. Hearing that you have come, I am delighted to welcome you. He also advised Zhu Luo, in a moment more ghosts will arrive. Just wave your precious sword at them, and I will assist you. They will all surrender without a fight. Zhu Luo was overjoyed and thanked the old man before sending him away. Soon after, ghosts with green and white faces arrived one after another. Zhu Luo struck them with his sword, and they fell instantly. Finally, a ghost with long teeth and a black mouth came. Zhu Luo struck him as well, and he too fell in pain. Zhu Luo was proud of himself and quickly called the innkeeper. By that time the rooster had crowed. Zhu Luo's servants came with candles to light up the scene, and they found corpses all over the floor. All were his wife, concubines, and children. Zhu Luo screamed in horror and then collapsed in grief. The unfallen old man. A man named Jiang traveled to Henan and stayed at an inn in Gong County. The inn had a western tower that was kept extremely clean, which Jiang liked very much, so he decided to stay there. The innkeeper joked, Are you brave enough to stay in that tower? Jiang replied, I have the courage of a true man. He sat there with a candle until late at night, when he heard a sound like bamboo buckets floating on water coming from beneath the bed. A creature in green clothes and a black hat, about 3 inches tall, resembling a common servant, stared at Jiang for a while before shouting, and then retreated. After a while, several small men carried a man in a ceremonial carriage. The man wore a black silk hat and sat there arrogantly, cursing at Jiang in a high-pitched voice. Jiang showed no sign of fear. Angered, the man slapped the ground with his small hand and ordered the small men to capture Jiang. The small men tried to hold Jiang down, but they were unable to move him. Angered at Jiang's lack of courage, the man stood up on his own. Jiang picked it up with his hand, placed it on a table, and examined it closely. It was none other than the well-known tumbler that cannot be knocked down. It lay there stiff and motionless, just an ordinary clay figurine. The people carrying it bowed down and begged to have it returned to its owner. Shediang joked, You must pay for it with some sort of compensation. In response, they said, Yes. From a hole in the wall came a buzzing sound. Sometimes 4 people carried 1 hairpin, and at other times 2 people carried 1. In a short while, jewelry made of gold and silk was scattered all over the ground. Shediang took the tumbler and threw it to them, and it was able to move again as before. However, the group was no longer orderly. They ran away in all directions. As dawn approached, the shopkeeper shouted, Thieves! Upon inquiry, it turned out that the items that had been redeemed by these people were actually the shopkeeper's own property that had been stolen by someone only 3 inches tall. The fortune-telling master and the ghost. There was a man surnamed Zhou who made a living by telling fortunes. When his boat passed under the Huzhou Bridge, the oar hit ajar, causing it to fall into the water. Upon returning home, his sister fell ill. He exclaimed, I am Shu, the fortune-telling master from Huzhou. During my lifetime, even high-ranking officials and nobles respected me. Who are you to throw my bones into the water? His sister, who was illiterate before, was now able to read after falling ill and took to telling fortunes for others. She wrote down a person's 8-character birth chart, and her predictions seemed to match the traditional theories of the 5 elements, but they were not very accurate. Zhou filed a complaint with the local deity. One day, after lying down for a while, his sister woke up and said, I saw 2 men in green clothes holding a ghost before the deity. The ghost knelt down and confessed to having destroyed my bones. The deity said, Your brother offended you, so why should you fear bullying the weak? You claim to be able to tell fortunes, yet you couldn't even protect your own bones. It's clear your predictions are not true. You deceived people of their wealth during your lifetime. I sentence you to 20 lashes and send you to Huzhu." From then on, his sister could no longer read and was also unable to tell fortunes. The ghost borrows strength to subdue a fierce man. It is commonly believed that at the end of a fierce man's life, a malevolent ghost will appear to subdue him. Mrs. Tang from Yangzhou was known for her fierceness and jealousy. She had killed countless concubines and servants at her hands. Suddenly she fell seriously ill, muttering curses, as if she were still acting violently as usual. A neighbor named Shu, who was exceptionally strong, fainted one day and then began to snore and curse as if he were in a fierce fight. It took several days for him to recover. When asked what happened, he said, "I was borrowed by a group of ghosts. The ghosts, following the orders of Yama, tried to subdue Mrs. Tang, but since she was so strong, they couldn't do it on their own, so they borrowed my strength to bind her. I fought with them for 3 days, and yesterday I managed to knock her down. Only then did they leave." Upon checking, Mrs. Tang was indeed dead, and there was a bruise on her left foot. Ma Pan Pan. Yu Jieshi, the governor of Shouju, was fond of using a medium to communicate with spirits. While serving as the prefect of Taiju, he invited a spirit to communicate through a medium. One day, the medium's board wrote the words Pan Pan and then 2 lives bond. Liu was greatly frightened, thinking it referred to Pan Pan. He asked, "What is the bond between these 2 lives?" The spirit replied, "This story is recorded in the beautiful tales of West Lake." Liu burned the paper, asking, "Can I meet you?" "Tonight," the spirit said. Indeed, that evening he fell ill. His vision blurred, and his mind became confused. His wife and concubines sat by his side, watching over him anxiously. After a while, a cool breeze blew, and a woman of extraordinary beauty, dressed in splendid attire and holding a red silk lantern, entered through the door and lunged at Liu. Liu broke into a cold sweat and felt remorseful. The woman said, "Are you afraid of me? The time for our meeting has not yet come." She then left through the door, and Liu's condition improved slightly. Afterwards, whenever Liu felt tempted, the woman would appear to him. One day, while staying at Tianning Temple in Yangzhou, Liu was bored during the rainy autumn and thought of this woman again. He burned the medium's paper, and the board wrote, "I am Wei Tuofo, a protective spirit. I have come to save you from being troubled by demons. Do you understand the heavenly laws? Those who most offend heaven are those who associate with ghosts and spirits during their lifetime. Such sins are considered the worst. You should repent quickly and not invite spirits or tempt demons, or you will ruin your own life." Liu was terrified and kowtowed. He then burned the medium's board and the talismans, and from then on he was free from further disturbances by demons. Years later, reading Westlake stories, I came across the following. In Taichu, there is the tomb of Ma Pan Pan, a courtesan from the Qing Dynasty, located to the left of the prefectural office. Qingshan Miscellaneous Records states, Pan Pan was clever and could imitate Su Dongpo's calligraphy. Only then did I realize that the so-called monster was not actually Pan Pan. Dian Miangu, a scholar from Sichuan, was wealthy but childless. After several failed attempts at having children, he sought advice from an astrologer who advised him, "In your fate, you have been destined to be with women. Even if you marry a man, it will be of no avail. Only by marrying a woman and treating her as such can you possibly remedy this situation." Following the astrologer's advice, Dian Miangu began to dress his wife in feminine attire, calling her Xiao Qinyang. He married a woman who did not wear bound feet, did not comb her hair, and did not have her ears pierced. Indeed, she grew up to be very intelligent and entered the Imperial examination system, giving birth to 2 sons. However, both sons died shortly after birth. From then on, whenever he had a son, he would treat him as a daughter. Dianmianggu himself was quite effeminate and wrote a collection of poems known as embroidered needle poems. My friend Yang, the governor of Chaozhou, was close to him and wrote a preface for this collection. There was also a Taoist priest named Zhang Luhao, who was very devoted to Taoism. When I returned home, I stayed in Jiangning for a while. There was a military officer under his command who recommended Taoist priest Zhu, claiming that Zhu possessed the art of immortality. Zhu claimed to be over 900 years old and could turn apricot kernels into silver, performing miracles time and again. Zhang Luhao, believing Zhu's claims, prepared 1 million taels of silver to make an elixir of immortality. After fasting and preparing for 3 days, he began the process, adding 50,000 taels of silver to each furnace, along with 100 loads of charcoal. During the day, Zhang Luhao supervised the process himself, while at night he entrusted it to others. Yet, the silver would instantly turn to water. After 3 months of effort and 80,000 taels of silver spent, there was no sign of the elixir. When Zhang Luhao questioned Zhu, the priest replied, "Once you have 1 million taels, the elixir will be ready. With it you will never suffer from hunger or cold, and you can go wherever you wish." With no other choice, Zhang Luhao gave Zhu another 100,000 taels. However, he soon realized that Zhu was a fraud. Whenever Zhu went to urinate, Zhang Luhao would send someone to follow him. One early morning when Zhu urinated in the garden, the observer lost sight of him. Upon checking the furnace, all the silver was gone. In Zhu's luggage, they found a letter that read, "This wealth of yours is not acquired through righteous means. I have a predestined connection with you. I have taken it to cover your sins in the afterlife. You will soon see the benefits. Please do not be surprised." The servants who observed Zhu reported that whenever 50,000 taels of silver were added to the furnace, there would be faint thunder noises above the room, and Zhu would panic, covering his head with a red talisman. There were no traces of any actual transportation of the silver. There was also a man named Ye Lao Tuo, whose origins were unknown. He always wore a simple cloth robe, regardless of the season, and carried a bamboo mat with him. Once, he stayed in an inn in Weiyang but found the other guests too noisy and sought a quieter place to rest. The innkeeper pointed to a room, saying, "This room is the quietest, but there is a ghost in it. It's not suitable for lodging." Ye Lao Tuo replied, "It won't harm me," and settled down there himself, spreading out his bamboo mat on the floor. That night, around the 3rd watch, the door suddenly opened. A woman appeared with silk tied around her neck. Her eyes were protruding, her tongue stretched out several feet long, and she walked slowly towards Ye Lao Tuo. Following her were 2 more ghosts. One was completely black with indistinct features, and the other had swollen limbs and a belly larger than a 5-stone gourd. They exclaimed, "There is a living soul here. We must seize her." They tried to attack Ye Lao Tuo, but they could not get close. One of the ghosts said, "She is clearly here, yet we cannot catch her." "Why?" The fat black ghost explained, "We can capture people because their hearts are filled with fear, causing their souls to leave their bodies first. But this man is a man of virtue. His heart is not afraid, so his soul remains with his body, making him difficult to catch." As the ghosts wandered around in confusion, Ye Lao Tuo stood up, sat down on the mat, and indicated his presence. The ghosts were terrified and knelt down. Ye Lao Tuo then questioned each of them one by one. A woman pointed to the 3 ghosts and said, "This one died in water, this one died in fire, and this one was executed for stealing and killing. As for me, I will hang myself in this room." The man asked, "Will you all submit to me?" They replied, "Yes." She then said, "In that case, each of you should reappear in a new life and stop haunting this place." With that, they bowed and left. By dawn, she told her master what had happened, and from then on, that room remained peaceful. Sudan and the God of Plague. In Hangzhou there lived an old man named Sudan who was known for his wit and love of mocking others. People disliked him. On New Year's Day, they drew a picture of the God of Plague and placed it above his door. In the morning, when Sudan opened the door, he saw it and laughed heartily. He welcomed the God of Plague into his home, offered him a seat, and drank with him before burning the picture. That year, a severe plague struck the area, and those who fell ill would often speak as if they were the God of Plague, saying, "I was honored by Sudan on New Year's Day. I feel ashamed and have no way to repay him. Those who wish to rid themselves of my curse must invite Sudan to accompany me, and then I will leave." As a result, those who worshipped the God of Plague competed to invite Sudan, and he was constantly busy with invitations, never lacking food and drink. In his family of over 10 people, not a single one fell ill. Governor Liu's strange dream. Liu, a governor from Shanxi, was transferred to work in the south and stayed at Huqiao in Suzhou. At midnight, he dreamed that he was riding a gentle breeze back to Shanxi. Before he reached his hometown, he encountered a ghost about 3 feet tall, with a deformed face and a hideous appearance. After a fierce struggle, Liu managed to catch the ghost and carried him under his arm, intending to throw him into a river. Along the way, he met a man from his neighborhood and suggested that they take the ghost to the Avalokiteshvara temple to seek the deity's help in preventing future troubles. Liu agreed, and they took the ghost to the temple. Outside the temple, the guardians of Avalokiteshvara, dressed as Vajras, glared at the ghost, raising their weapons as if ready to strike. The ghost became terrified. When Avalokiteshvara saw them, he ordered them to take the ghost back to the underworld. Liu thanked him, and the Vajras reluctantly agreed to do so. However, the Vajras seemed reluctant to carry out the task. Avalokiteshvara smiled at Liu and said, "Then you shall take him to the underworld yourself." Liu knelt down and asked, "How can a mere mortal like me reach the underworld?" Avalokiteshvara replied, "It's easy." He blew on Liu's face 3 times, and then sent him on his way. The ghost bowed silently and followed him. Liu thought that although he had Avalokiteshvara's blessing, he had no idea where the underworld was. While hesitating, he met the same man again, who pointed out that the underworld was marked by a bamboo hat covering the ground. Looking north, Liu saw a hat resembling a jar used for preserving food. Upon lifting it, he discovered a well. The ghost jumped into it with joy, but Liu followed, only to find it extremely cold. Every time he fell about 10 feet, he got caught in the well, only to be lifted up again by a warm current. After falling 3 times, they suddenly found themselves on tiles. Looking around, they were in a different world with bright sunlight. The tiles they landed on belonged to the corner of a royal palace. Inside, the gods were furious and demanded, "Where did this human breath come from?" A man in golden armor brought Liu before the king, who wore a dragon robe and a white beard. The king asked, "Why have you come here, human?" Liu explained that Avalokiteshvara had sent him there. The king ordered the armored god to examine Liu's face. There was a red glow on it, confirming that Avalokiteshvara had indeed sent him. The king asked where the ghost was, and Liu said he was at the foot of the wall. The king sternly ordered the ghost to be sent back to his original place. The gods then pierced the ghost with their spears and threw him into a pool, where poisonous snakes and giant turtles fought over eating him. Liu thought to himself that since he was now in the underworld, he might as well learn about his past lives. He asked the armored god about his previous life, and the god agreed to show him. They went to a corridor where the god pulled out a book and showed Liu that in his previous life, at the age of 9, he had stolen a child and sold him for 8 taels of silver. The child's parents died of grief, and Liu died young due to this sin. Now, in his rebirth, he was destined to be blind as punishment for his wrongdoing. Liu was horrified and wondered if doing good deeds could expiate this sin. The deity said, "Let's see how good you truly are." Before he could finish speaking, a cry came from within the hall. "The heavenly sign has arrived. Quickly send Liu back to the living world. Do not allow any secrets of the underworld to be revealed." A god in golden armor escorted Liu to the king's presence. Liu knelt down and pleaded, "I am but a mortal. How can I leave this realm of the dead?" The king took Liu by the back, drew in 3 breaths, and then pushed him down into a well. 3 times he pushed. 3 times Liu was lifted. Warm air rose from below, and Liu emerged from the well. Upon reaching the road to Chang'an, Liu reported everything that had happened to the Guanyin temple and knelt down to explain the circumstances of his journey to the underworld. A young boy beside him kept murmuring incessantly, and what he said was exactly the same as what Liu had experienced. Liu was shocked to realize that the boy's ears, eyes, mouth, and nose were precisely his own, only reduced in size to those of a baby. Frightened, Liu pointed at the boy and shouted, "This is a demon!" The boy in turn pointed at Liu and said, "This is a demon!" Guanyin told Liu, "Do not fear, this is your soul. Your soul is evil, while your spirit is good. That's why your actions were so stubborn and not entirely enlightened. Now I will help you transform it." Liu thanked her, but the boy did not thank her, saying, "I was once in that form. If you wish to change me now, you must first get rid of me. Won't my departure cause harm to that form?" Guanyin smiled and took out a golden hairpin about a foot long. The Yu's sighed, pulled out her intestine and wrapped it around it with her wrist. With each twist of her wrist, the boy's body gradually shrank. Once wrapped completely, she threw the boy onto a beam, and he disappeared from sight. Guanyin then slapped the table with her palm, and Liu awoke, still lying on his pillow in Suzhou. A red mark remained on his side. More than a month later, news reached him that a man surnamed Lin from his neighborhood had died. This story was personally told to me by Qixie. Zhao and Li, 2 scholars from Guangdong, studied in the mountains of Panyu during the Dragon Boat Festival. Zhao's parents prepared food and wine to celebrate with them, and they drank merrily together. At the second drumbeat of midnight, they heard knocking at the door. It was another scholar, neatly dressed in formal attire. He claimed to live about 10 miles away and admired their noble character, wishing to become their friend. They invited him in to sit down, and they began to discuss various topics. They talked about examinations, classical literature, and poetry. Liu and Li felt they were not up to par in these areas. Eventually they turned to the subject of immortality and Buddhism. Zhao was not interested in such topics, but Li believed them quite firmly. The scholar then claimed that it was possible to see the Buddha. He suggested they try it immediately. He piled up a table about 5 feet high and sat on it, and instantly a fragrant aura of sandalwood filled the air. He then took a silk ribbon from his body and made a circle, saying, "Enter this circle and you will be in the land of the Buddha, where you can see the Buddha." Li, being very credulous, wanted to give it a try. The scholar stepped into the circle, and an aura of sandalwood filled the air. Guan Yin and Wei Tuo appeared, with fragrant smoke drifting about. Just as Li was about to follow, he saw in the circle a being with tusks, a green face, and a tongue that stretched over a foot in length. He screamed in terror. The servants rushed in, and Li awoke as if from a dream. Although he managed to free himself, he found scratches on his neck. The scholar vanished without a trace. Both men believed that the mountain was haunted and decided not to study there any longer, and they each returned home. The following year, Li passed the Imperial examinations and was appointed as the magistrate of Lujiang. However, he was later accused of wrongdoing and committed suicide. Lin Shesai from Shandong failed the Imperial examinations at the age of 40. One day, he had the idea of changing his career. He heard someone calling out to him, "Do not lose heart." Lin was startled and asked, "Who is it?" "I am a ghost. I have been accompanying and protecting you for several years," the voice replied. Lin wished to see the ghost's appearance, but the ghost refused. After much pleading, the ghost agreed on one condition: Lin must not be afraid. Lin knelt down, and the ghost, with a bloody face, said, "I was a merchant from Lanchang County. I was killed by Zhang from Yexian County, and my body was pressed under the stone mill at the East City Gate. Since you will one day become the magistrate of Yexian County, I have been serving you, hoping you will seek justice for me." It also mentioned that Lin would pass the local examinations in a certain year and become a successful scholar in another year. But when that time came, Lin failed to achieve his goal. Later, Lin indeed became a magistrate, but he never succeeded in becoming a successful scholar as predicted. He lamented, "Even ghosts may not know everything about worldly fame and fortune." Before he could finish speaking, a voice called out from the air, "Your actions have brought you own misfortune. It is not my mistake for giving you false information. On a certain day of a certain month, you had an illicit affair with a widow, but fortunately, no child was conceived, and no one became aware of it. The Underworld has recorded your wrongdoing, yet they have mercy on you and delayed your punishment by 2 terms. Lin was terrified, and from then on devoted himself to practicing goodness. After 2 more terms, he became a successful scholar, and was appointed to an official position in Yexian. Upon taking up his post and entering the city, he came across a stone mill. Upon opening it, he indeed found a corpse inside. He immediately arrested Zhang, and upon interrogation, Zhang confessed to the crime, and he was brought to justice. In the regions of Qin, the soil is extremely deep. There are instances where people dig 3 to 5 jiang, a unit of length, without reaching any springs. To the west of Fengshan, there is a custom where deceased individuals are not buried immediately but are left exposed until their flesh and blood have completely decayed before burial. Otherwise, there is a belief that this could lead to misfortune. If a body is buried before it has decomposed, within 3 months, hair begins to grow all over it. Those with white hair are known as white misfortunes, while those with black hair are called black misfortunes, and they are said to enter people's homes and cause harm. A man surnamed Sun, who lived near the Governor Liu, dug up a stone gate and discovered a tunnel inside. The tunnel was neatly furnished with pottery items such as dishes, chickens, dogs, and jars. Inside were 2 coffins with several men and women nailed to the walls beside them. It is believed that in ancient times, people were nailed there as sacrifices to prevent them from serving as servants after death. Their clothing and appearances were still somewhat discernible. However, as one approached closer, a wind arose from the tomb, turning everything to ash, leaving only bones that resembled white dust. The nails were still visible on the walls. It was unknown whose tomb this was. There were also other remains found that appeared to be human forms but lacked ears and eyes. It is suspected that these were the transformed remains of ancient corpses. The tomb of Xiahou Dun. During the lifetime of Zhang Yong, the military commander of Songyong, his father dreamed of a golden armored spirit who claimed to be General Xiahou from the Han Dynasty. Shortly thereafter, Zhang Yong was born. Later, when Zhang Yong was granted a noble title and buried, an ancient stele was discovered with the inscription Tomb of General Xiahou Dun of Wei, written in characters the size of bowls. After 2,000 years, his bones and flesh returned to their original place, which was quite a remarkable phenomenon. 2 incidents from beyond the Great Wall. During the reign of Emperor Yongzheng, the general Ji Chengbin was executed for violating military regulations and became a notorious ghost beyond the Great Wall. A later general, upon taking over his position, encountered a soldier who, during the day, fell to the ground and claimed to be General Ji, begging for food. Everyone bowed to him, thinking he was seeking forgiveness. Chen Duishuan, a brave man, stepped forward, slapped the soldier's face and cursed, "Ji Chengbin, you retreated in the face of battle against Allaputan and were executed according to military law. If ghosts truly possess souls, you should feel ashamed. How dare you pretend to be a haunting ghost and beg for food?" After the curse, the soldier immediately stood up and ceased his bizarre behavior. From then on, whenever someone fell ill and claimed to be General Ji, they would call out, "General Chen has arrived," and the illness would instantly disappear. When Ji was executed, all his servants fled. One of the kitchen servants collected his remains. This servant later died of an unknown illness and began to haunt those who were also ill, claiming to be the kitchen god, and saying, "The heavens, moved by my loyalty to my master, have appointed me as the leader of these ghosts." When asked where General Ji was, he replied, "The heavens are angry that he violated the rules and caused tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians to suffer. He was punished to become a plague ghost and is now under my control. However, because I once served my master, I do not dare to do them harm. Nevertheless, my words are always obeyed." Afterwards, whenever a ghost resembling General Ji appeared beyond the Great Wall, people would first call out for General Chen. If Chen did not appear, they would summon the kitchen god, and then the ghost would vanish. The guardian god of the prison, before passing the Imperial examinations, Ma Xiaolian from Liang stayed at an inn in a village to the west of the town. There lived a cruel man named Wang, who regularly beat his wife. Desperate and hungry, the wife stole chickens from the Li family to cook for herself. When Li discovered this, she reported it to her husband. Drunk, the husband flew into a rage and, armed with a knife, took his wife to confront her. After investigating, he found out the truth and decided to kill her. The wife, in fear, falsely accused Xiaolian of stealing the chickens. Xiaolian argued in defense, but could not prove his innocence. He suggested they go to the local temple of the guardian god to consult the oracle bones. According to the results, if the bones fell on the yin side, it meant the woman had stolen the chickens. If on the yang side, it meant a man had. As predicted, the bones fell on the yang side. The husband threw down his knife and released his wife. However, due to the accusation of stealing chickens, Xiaolian was shunned by the villagers and lost his inn for several years. One day, a medium ascended the altar and claimed to be the deity Guan. Recalling past events, the filial and incorruptible official loudly condemned the deity for being ineffective. The medium wrote on a piece of ash, "Ma Xiaolian, in your future role of governing the people, will you understand the urgency and importance of different matters? You stole a chicken and were merely dismissed from your post. My wife, however, who also stole a chicken, was executed on the spot. I would rather bear the reputation of being ineffective than fail to save human lives. The supreme deity took notice of my understanding of governance, and thus promoted me 3 ranks. Why do you resent me?" Xiaolian replied, Since Guan has been elevated to the status of an emperor, what promotion is there left? The medium replied, Nowadays, there are temples dedicated to Guan throughout the land. How could there be so many Guan deities competing for offerings? In every village where such temples are established, they act upon the orders of the supreme deity, appointing the most upright ghosts from the local community to perform their duties on their behalf. The true Guan deities reside by the emperor's side. How could they descend to mortal realms? Only then did Xiaolian accept this explanation. Ziqing Yan Yu, words of Ziqing smoke, Yang Dapiao, also known as Bin, was skilled in calligraphy. At the age of 60, he fell ill and died, only to revive later and say,
The dude said the heavenly bookstore called me to take an examination.
Recently, the Jade Emperor compiled a work called Ziqing Yan Yu, and there were few who could copy it accurately. Therefore, they summoned those skilled in calligraphy to take the test. I do not know if I passed. If I did, I will not be able to reincarnate. 3 days later, the sound of cranes and phoenixes was heard in the sky. Yang said solemnly, I cannot follow Wang Shengqian's example of ruining my own life with my own actions. With that, he closed his eyes and passed away. When asked about his ranking among the heavenly calligraphers, it was said that he was first in the Suzhou category and 10th in the Right Army category. Gu Yao Nian. In the 15th year of the Qianlong era, I was staying at the home of Zhang Yufeng in Suzhou. His son Bao Chen went to take the provincial examination in Jinling and returned home seriously ill. Yufeng summoned various famous doctors, but all seemed uncertain about his condition. Knowing that I was on good terms with Shi Zhengjun, also known as Yipiao, he urged me to write a letter to invite him. Before I could arrive, Yufeng and I waited at the door. The sick man called out, Gu Yao Nian has arrived, and repeatedly invited us to sit down. Gu Yao Nian was a commoner from Suzhou, who had previously been persecuted by the governor for advocating fair prices and organizing people to protest against officials. After sitting down, he said to Jiang, Mr. Jiang, you have already ranked 38th in the provincial examination, and your illness is not serious. You can relax. If you offer me some food and drink, I will leave. Upon hearing this, Yufeng hurriedly entered the room to comfort him. The sick man said, There is an official from Qiantang at the door. I am afraid of him and cannot leave. He then added, Mr. Shi has also arrived. He is a skilled doctor. I should avoid him. Yufeng quickly went out to make way, and indeed Shi entered. After examining the patient, Xue prescribed a remedy, and the man recovered immediately. That year, Bao Chan indeed achieved the rank he was predicted to. Yao Dao Qi Yu, the demon's request for fish. My brother-in-law, Wang Gengnan, lived near Henghe Bridge in Hangzhou. One morning, he encountered a Taoist priest at his door, who bowed and requested a fish. Gengnan angrily replied, You are a monk who follows a vegetarian diet. Why do you ask for fish? The priest said, It's for a ritual use. Gengnan refused. The priest warned, If you are stingy now, you will regret it later. After the priest left, that night, they heard sounds of tiles falling. The next morning they found tiles piled up in the courtyard. The following night, all of their clothes ended up inside the toilet. Gengnan sought talismans from Zhang Yuqian, a scholar. Zhang offered 2 types of talismans, one inexpensive and one expensive. The inexpensive one could provide temporary relief, while the expensive one could summon deities for real assistance. Yongnan chose the cheaper one and hung it in the main hall. That night, they slept peacefully. 3 days later, another old Taoist priest, with a strange appearance, came to knock on the door. Since Gyeongnan was not home, his second son, Howen, answered the door. The priest said, Your family was troubled by that Taoist priest earlier. I am actually his disciple. Seeking help from talismans is useless. You should seek it from me. You may ask your father to go to the Lengquan Pavilion by West Lake tomorrow and shout Iron Crown 3 times. I will then arrive. Otherwise the talisman will be stolen by ghosts. After returning home, inform me of the outcome. The next morning, Gongnan went to Lengquan Pavilion and shouted Iron Crown hundreds of times, but there was no response. Coincidentally, Qiantong Prefect Wang Jiahui passed by, and Gongnan stopped him to explain the situation. Wang suspected him of being insane and verbally abused him severely. That night, Gongnan gathered several strong men from his household to guard the talisman. At dawn, there was a loud noise, and the talisman was no longer there. Upon inspection in the morning, there were footprints resembling those of a giant, about a foot in length. From then on, every night a crowd of ghosts would gather, banging on doors and throwing bowls. Gongnan was terrified and offered 50 gold pieces to Zhang for the talisman again. Once it was hung up again, the ghosts indeed ceased their disturbances. One day, Wang became angry with his eldest son, Ho Zeng, and was about to strike him with a staff. Ho Zeng fled and did not return for 3 days. Gongnan's sister wept incessantly. Gongnan searched for him personally and found him wandering by the river, on the verge of drowning. He quickly pulled him onto the shoulder pole, but Ho Zeng weighed twice as much as usual. When they returned home, Ho Zeng's eyes were wide open and he spoke incoherently. Lying under the mat, he suddenly exclaimed, "I must be questioned. If you question me, I will leave immediately." Gongnan said, "Where are you going? I will go with you." Ho Zeng got up, put on his clothes, and knelt down beside the talisman. Gongnan followed him. Gongnan saw nothing unusual, but Ho Zeng saw a deity sitting there, with 3 eyes between his eyebrows, a golden face, and red beard. The men kneeling beside him were all of small stature. The deity said, "Wang Moyang's life has not yet ended. How dare you use fear to tempt him towards death?" It also said, "You petty officials from the 5 directions, do you not obey the decrees of the Supreme Pure? Yet you serve as slaves to evil paths." They all apologized for their sins, and the deity struck each of them 30 times with a stick. The ghosts cried out in sorrow. Upon looking at their buttocks, they were covered in a greenish mud color. After the incident, everything returned to peace. A corpse came to complain of its injustice. In the western countryside of Changzhou, there lived a man surnamed Gu. One evening, as he walked through the outskirts, he took refuge in an ancient temple. The temple monk said, "Tonight we are to transport a corpse. All the monks have left, and there is no one in the temple but you. Please watch over it for me." Gu agreed and closed the temple door, then went to sleep with the lamp still burning. At the 3rd watch of the night, someone began to knock on the door loudly. Gu asked, "Who is it?" From outside came a response, "It's Shen Dinglan." Shen Dinglan was a former acquaintance of Gu's, who had been dead for 10 years. Gu was terrified and refused to open the door. However, the voice outside continued, "Do not be afraid. I have a matter to entrust to you. If you delay opening the door, since I am now a ghost, cannot I simply force my way in? I am calling you to open it out of respect for an old friend." Gu had no choice but to unlock the door. With a loud noise, as if someone had fallen to the ground, a voice said, "I am not Shen Dinglan. I am Limu, a man from the eastern household who was poisoned to death by a treacherous woman. I am using Shen Dinglan's name to seek your help in avenging my death." Gu replied, "I am not an official. How can I avenge such a crime?" The ghost said, "The wounds on the corpse can be examined." Gu asked, "Where is the corpse?" "You will see it as soon as you bring the lamp." But as soon as Gu brought the lamp, the ghost could say no more. Just as Gu was in a state of panic, Many people began knocking on the door again. When Gu went to open it, he found a group of monks returning to the temple, all looking frightened. They explained, "We were chanting scriptures to transport a corpse, but it vanished. We had to return home." Gu told them what had happened, and together they used a light to search for the corpse. They found a body with 7 wounds from which blood was flowing. The next day, they reported the incident to the authorities, and the injustice was finally redressed. The Hong family's prison in Shuyang. During the Qianlong era, I served as the magistrate of Shuyang. There was a scholar from Huai'an named Wu who stayed at the home of the Hong family. Wu brought his wife and son to live with them. One night, when the master of the Hong family returned home, his wife was found murdered. The knife used for the murder was one of those used for chopping vegetables in Wu's household. I examined the body and saw 3 wounds on the woman's neck. Her throat was covered in blood, a sight truly tragic. Despite thorough investigation, no clues were found to the murderer. Among the Hong family's servants was a man named Hong An, who habitually held objects with his left hand. Since the knife wounds were more severe on the left side than on the right, he was questioned. At first he confessed, but later claimed that he had been instructed by the master of the house, Hong Sheng, to commit the crime, and that he had killed the woman because his attempt to commit adultery was thwarted. When Hong Sheng was questioned, he claimed that Hong An had falsely accused him out of revenge. Before the case could be concluded, I was transferred to another post. Later, when I met with Judge Wei Gongting, we decided to convict Hong An based on the evidence provided. However, Judge Wei Gongzhao doubted the reliability of the confessions. So both were released, and the real murderer was never found. 12 years later, in June of the Bingzi year, my cousin Feng Yi came from Shuyang and told me that a man named Hong, who was a military student, had died of illness the previous year. His coffin remained unburied. In a dream, Hong's spirit told his wife, "I am the one who murdered Master Wu's wife. I escaped justice for over a decade, but now my aggrieved soul has complained to heaven. Tomorrow at noon, thunder will strike the coffin. Please quickly relocate it to avoid this calamity." That very day, at noon, a fire broke out in front of the coffin, turning it and the bones to ashes. The thatched cottage and wooden items were otherwise unharmed. I felt ashamed that as a magistrate, I had failed to avenge the woman's injustice, and had even wronged an innocent person. I wondered why heaven's retribution came so late 10 years after the crime, and why it struck not the perpetrator but the innocent remains. Such fierce villains, now dead, their spirits no longer possess any power. Yet why do they still haunt in dreams and cherish their former mortal bodies? Lei Gong is bewitched. Zhao Likun, a scholar from Nanfang, recounted that his ancestor was a local tyrant. During the chaotic times at the end of the Qing Dynasty, there was a bandit who ruled the area with force, extorting money from the common people. Zhao reported him to the authorities and the bandit's gang was dispersed. Enraged, the bandits harbored resentment against Zhao. Zhao, being strong and brave, did not dare to take revenge on them personally. However, whenever thunder rumbled at night, they would gather and pray, "Why don't you strike down the villain, Zhao?" One day, while Zhao was picking flowers in the garden, he saw a creature with a pointed mouth and hairy body descend from the sky, accompanied by a loud noise and a foul-smelling gas. Realizing that it was Lei Gong, the god of thunder, who had been bewitched by the bandits, Zhao threw a container at it and shouted, "Lei Gong! Lei Gong! In my 50 years of life, I've never seen you strike a tiger, yet I've seen you strike cows many times. You favor the wicked and fear the good. How could you do such a thing? If you can respond to me, I'll die without regret." Lei Gong fell silent, his eyes flashing with anger as if filled with shame. Zhao then fell into a field and roared in pain for 3 days. Only after the bandits held a ritual to exorcise him did he leave. A ghost pretends to be a deity and demands sacrifices. A certain guard was skilled in archery and was chasing rabbits near Dongjie Gate. He accidentally pushed an old man into a well while riding his horse. Frightened, he rushed home. That night, the old man appeared at his door and cursed. "Although you didn't intend to kill me, you saw me fall into the well and failed to help me. How could you have the heart to just run away and go home?" The guard had no answer. The old man then began to cause trouble repeatedly. The family prayed and held a ritual to appease him, but to no avail. The ghost said, "It's useless. If you want me to leave you in peace, you must carve a wooden statue of me, write my name on it, and offer me pig's trotters daily. Treat me like an ancestor, and then I will forgive you." Following his instructions, the troubles ceased. From then on, whenever the guard passed by Dongjie Gate, he would take a detour to avoid the well. A ghost haunts again. Later, when accompanying an emperor's entourage passing by Dongjie Gate, the guard was ordered to take the same route. The supervisor reprimanded him, saying, "What will you say if the emperor asks where you were? Moreover, it's broad daylight, with 1,000 horses present. Why should you fear a ghost?" With no choice, the guard passed by the well again. This time, he saw the old man standing by the well. The old man grabbed his clothes and cursed, "I finally caught you. You didn't help me when your horse knocked me over 2 years ago. How could you be so heartless?" The guard pleaded in terror, but the old man, already having received sacrifices at his home for several years, suddenly changed his attitude. The old man said, "I'm not dead. Why do you need to offer me sacrifices? Although I fell into the well, others who heard my cries for help were quick to rescue me. How dare you doubt that I'm a ghost?" The guard was terrified and took the old man to his home. They checked the wooden statue, which did not bear his name. The old man angrily threw it away and scattered the offerings. The family was confused, but then they heard a loud laugh in the air before the ghost disappeared. A ghost fears people and desperately avoids them. Jie, a high-ranking official, disliked talking about ghosts and spirits. Whenever he stayed somewhere, he would choose houses that were reputed to be haunted. Once, while staying in an inn in Shandong, he heard rumors of a ghost in the west wing. Jie, unafraid, entered the room. By the second drumbeat, a tile fell from the ceiling. Jie cursed, "If it's a ghost, it should target something not in my room." Indeed, a millstone fell. Jie then challenged the ghost, "If it's a vengeful spirit, it should be able to break my desk." A large stone fell and shattered half of the desk. Jie, furious, threw his hat to the ground and waited defiantly. From then on, there were no more disturbances. Heavenly shell and the theory of chaos. Heaven and earth are like an egg. Before the yolk and white are separated, it is a state of chaos. Once they are separated, creation begins. Humans cannot travel beyond the confines of this eggshell. Thus the Taoist concept of 33 heavens remains elusive and unfathomable. In the region of Qin, the earth is often prone to fissures, causing entire villages to be swallowed up. Some areas spew forth black water, others emit smoke and fire, while some cracks simply close again. However, those who were trapped never re-emerge from beneath the earth, and their fate remains unknown. In the 3rd year of the Shunji era, a landslide occurred in Wuwei. There was a man named Dong Yu who practiced techniques for immortality and was capable of submerging himself in the sea without dying. His entire family met their end in this disaster. 9 days later, Dong Yu emerged from the ground and said, "When we fell, it felt like a gentle descent. For a day and night, we continued to fall until we reached a spring. The process was both strange and comfortable. I was even able to converse with my family. But once we hit the spring, they all drowned. I descended over 1,000 feet into the water, before finally drying out. Above me, everything was a pure yellow. Gradually, it became clearer, and I saw a vast expanse of sky below. I could hear the sounds of people and animals carried by the wind. I thought, this must be beyond the heavenly shell. It would be wonderful to land in the second layer of heaven. Even if I landed on people's rooftops, wouldn't they regard me as a celestial being? So I tried my utmost to ascend. However, a strong wind swept me up into the air, preventing me from descending. Suddenly, a man dressed in ancient attire, over 2 zhang tall, shouted, "This is the boundary between the 2 heavens. For eons, no one has broken through this barrier. Who are you to harbor such foolish thoughts? Hurry back to your own world before the earth closes again, or when it does, you will be crushed to death." Before he finished speaking, a burst of golden light arrived, unbearably hot. The man in ancient attire touched Dong Yu's back and said, "Hurry, the sun is about to rise. I must flee. If you don't move now, your flesh will be turned to ashes." Dong Yu, terrified, used his powers to ascend. His face and skin were corroded by water and soil, turning black like charred coal. His clothes and flesh stuck together. It took over a month for him to regain his human form, and he called himself the Old Man Beyond the Disaster. According to the Huinanzi, there exists a region beneath the temperate zone where no living beings exist. The area near where Dong Yu found himself must be that temperate zone. During the Kangxi era, Dong Yu's great-uncle, Gong Wei, served as the magistrate of Xi'an and prayed for rain in the southern mountains. There was an ancient temple there, featuring a statue of a handsome young man, dressed in golden furs and dragon robes, resembling the attire of Han Dynasty princes and marquises. When asked who this deity was, a Taoist priest identified him as Sun Ce. Gong Wei thought that Sun Ce, known for his military prowess, could not have visited Chang'an. Moreover, the deity's graceful appearance suggested he might be an evil spirit. They planned to destroy the temple and reuse its materials to build a new Dragon King shrine at Mount Taibai. That night, Dong Yu dreamed of being summoned by the deity who said, "I am not Sun Ce but Dong Xian, the great marshal of the Han Dynasty. I was unjustly killed by Wang Mang and suffered a terrible death. The heavens pitied me for being innocent. Despite holding a high position and receiving great favor, I never harmed a single scholar or official. For that, I was made the deity in charge of local weather." Gong Wei recognized Dong Yu from the accounts of his virtues in historical texts. The deity seemed displeased and said, "Do not be deceived by Bangu, who wrote in his Annals of the Deceased Emperor that the emperor was infertile. Such a contradiction. Indeed, I once shared a close relationship with the emperor. During the reign of Emperor Wu, Generals Wei and Hu also enjoyed great favor, but they cannot be compared to me. Your fate is predetermined by the stars. I have no reason to refuse. However, this injustice has lasted for 2,000 years, and you must clear my name." Before he finished speaking, 2 ghosts with blue faces and tusk-like teeth brought an old man who was bald and hoarse, holding a scroll in his hands. A divine being said, "This is the villain Wang Mang. For his heinous crimes, he was banished to the Yin Mountains, where he was tormented by venomous snakes for a long time. Now that he has been pardoned, I have brought him here to oversee certain duties. If he commits any minor offenses, he will be whipped with an iron whip." When one asked, "What book is in the prisoner's hands?" The divine being laughed and replied, "This villain has believed in the rights of Zhou all his life. Even in death he still clings to it. When he is whipped with the iron whip, he uses the rights of Zhou to protect his back." Gongwon checked, and indeed it was the rights of Zhou. On it were the words, servant Liu Xin, respectfully revised, which made him laugh heartily, and then he awoke. The next day, he donated 100 gold coins to renovate the temple and offered sacrifices to the deity. Later, he dreamed that the divine being came to thank him, saying, "I am deeply moved by your act of repairing the temple. However, there is no one to offer sacrifices with me, which is somewhat lonely. My clerk, Zhu Shu, was a man of righteousness. He buried my body after my death, but I was killed by Wang Mang. Out of gratitude for his kindness, I petitioned the heavens, and his son Zhu Fu was appointed as the Grand Minister of Works under Emperor Guangwu. Please keep this in mind." Gongwan then sculpted a statue of Lord Zhu beside the statue of Duke Dong, and also sculpted a figure of Wang Mang kneeling below. From then on, whenever they prayed for clear weather or rain, their prayers were always answered. The Three-Headed Man. During the reign of Emperor Kangxi, when rebellion erupted in Wu, roads were cut off. 3 brothers surnamed Zhang from Huju were fleeing back to their hometown from Yunnan. After walking for 10 days and nights, they lost their way and had to eat tree leaves and grass roots. One morning, as they wandered through the wilderness, strong wind blew from the west, sounding like the roar of the sea or a river tide. Frightened, they climbed a hill to look around and saw a black bull larger than an elephant, staggering past and sweeping the plants aside as it moved. In the evening, with nowhere to stay, they spotted what appeared to be a house under a large tree. They approached it, and inside emerged a man over 7 feet tall with 3 heads. Whenever he spoke, all 3 heads spoke simultaneously, in clear and recognizable voices that sounded like those from the Central Plains. When the man asked where the brothers came from, they told him the truth. The 3-headed man asked, "You have lost your way while walking. Are you hungry?" The brothers thanked him. He then called for his sister to cook them a meal, and she too appeared. She was a woman with 3 heads as well. She looked at the Zhang brothers and laughed, saying to her brothers, "The eldest of these gentlemen will live a long life, but the 2 younger ones are likely to face difficulties." After the brothers finished eating, the 3-headed man broke off a branch for them, saying, "Use this to cast a shadow in the sunlight. It can serve as a guide. However, as you approach the temples ahead, you may find shelter there, but do not strike the bells or drums. Remember that well." The brothers followed his advice. The next day, they entered a mountainous area with an ancient temple where they could rest. While sitting under the eaves, a flock of crows flew over and began pecking at their heads. Enraged, Zhang threw stones at them, accidentally striking a bell inside the temple, which made a loud noise. 2 demons jumped out and grabbed the 2 younger brothers, tearing them apart and eating them. Just as they were about to attack Zhang, they heard the sound of a stormy wind, and a huge black bull arrived, fighting with the demons. After a while, the demons fled and Zhang managed to escape. It took them several days to finally return home. The Water Ghost Broom. My cousin Zhang Hongye stayed at a residence belonging to a family surnamed Pan by the Qinhuai River. One summer night, after using the toilet when all noise had ceased and the moonlight was bright, Zhang enjoyed the moonlight by the railing when he heard a splash in the water. Curious, he looked closely and saw a head emerge from the water. Thinking it was impossible for anyone to be swimming at that time, he watched closely. The head had no facial features, a black body, and its neck was immobile, resembling a piece of wood. He threw a stone at it, and it disappeared back into the water. The next afternoon, a man was found drowned. Only then did Zhang realize that the creature that had appeared was a water ghost. He shared this experience with his fellow residents. Another traveler recounted a strange encounter with a water ghost. Once, while selling rice in Jiaxing, he crossed a muddy ditch. Because the mud was too deep, he rode on a water buffalo. Halfway across, a black hand emerged from the mud and grabbed his foot. The man pulled his foot back, but the black hand also grabbed the buffalo's foot, preventing it from moving. In panic, he called for help from passers-by to pull the buffalo free. Unable to move the buffalo, they decided to burn its tail with fire. The ox, in agony from the pain, struggled to rise from the mud. Beneath its belly, a broken broom was tightly entangled and impossible to untie, emitting a foul smell that was unbearable to approach. They struck it with a stick, and it let out a high-pitched cry. Every drop of blood that fell was black. The crowd used knives to cut the broom free, and then burned it with firewood, and the stench only dissipated after a month. From then on, that muddy ditch no longer caused anyone to drown. A traveller wrote a poem about this incident which says, originally intending to lead people astray by pulling the ox, why then regret and cry in sorrow? Here's a handful of mulberry wood for burning. In secret schemes, do not act openly. During the Yongzheng era, a man from the inner city arranged a marriage for his son. The bride's family was also of noble lineage and lived outside Shahe Gate. As the bridal procession passed by an ancient tomb, a gust of wind emerged from within the grave and circled around the carriage several times. The flying sand blinded everyone in its path, and it took some time for the situation to calm down. When they finally arrived at the groom's home, the carriage stopped in the main hall, and the attendants helped the bride out. To their surprise, another bride appeared from within the carriage, standing alongside the first one. Both were dressed in vibrant colors, and it was impossible to distinguish between the real and the fake. They were taken into the inner rooms, where the groom's parents were shocked but had no choice but to proceed with the wedding rituals. During all ceremonies involving worshipping ancestors and visiting relatives, the groom was forced to stand between the two brides. He was overjoyed to have married two beautiful women at once. At night, he lay with both of them in bed, while the servants and maids returned to their own rooms, and the groom's parents also retired to rest. Suddenly, screams were heard from the bride's room. They rushed in to find blood everywhere. The groom lay unconscious outside the bed, and one of the brides lay on the bed covered in blood, while the other had disappeared without a trace. Upon lighting the lamps, they saw a large bird perched on the beam, greyish-black, in colour with a hooked beak, and giant claws like snow. Despite their attempts to attack with short weapons, it flew away with a flapping of its wings. The groom later said, "We had been lying together for a while when, suddenly, the woman on my left swung her sleeve, and my eyes were gouged out. The pain was unbearable, and I lost consciousness. I have no idea how that bird appeared." When questioned about the other bride, she said, "When you screamed and lost consciousness, I was so frightened that I too became unconscious immediately." After months of treatment, both recovered, but they were left blind, a tragic outcome. Mr. Zhang Guangji from the Yellow Banner recounted this story to me. It is said that in desolate graves, the accumulated energy of dead bodies over time transforms into Rakshasa birds large, greyish-black in colour, with hooked beaks and giant claws. These birds can take on various forms and have a penchant for eating human eyes. They are considered to be related to demons and other evil spirits.